All right, we are back. I'm Fletcher Wheaton, and I'm here with Lauren House. If you want to know about Lauren, we're joking, just Google her. Instead of going into the 10-minute long intro, this is the third session we're doing, third podcast. And the first two are really focused on marketing. And this one is really, once again, going to be for real estate agents, but it's also about etiquette, following up, and just response with clients. So I'm excited about this one. How are you doing, Lauren?
I'm doing well. I'm excited too. I'm curious this is like the operational side of a business. This is the day-to-day. This is how you treat your client. One of the questions we're going to ask is, does it make or break your client's opinion of you? So I'm actually super excited to see what you do and why you do it. And our first question is, how quick do you reply to phone call, text, email?
It's a good question. Especially for somebody starting out, I really think the sooner you get back to somebody, the better, especially if it's like a lead that comes in. But, I think those are different things, right? You have like the text, you have call, and then you have email, and some people, it depends upon the client, right? But when I'm especially first starting a relationship with a client, I want to give them, the best. And it's not like I'm not going to try to do that all the way through, but some people are really hands off and some people are really hands on, right? So they want like information immediately. This goes back to like a Gary Keller thing. He says if the client is reaching out to you for information about, a deal going through or anything like that, then you're not doing your job, because you should have reached out to them already. Or they have questions about something, you should at least been giving them some information about it because they're clearly interested, and you should keep going with that. With that being said, like getting an email at, let's call it like 8:30 p.m. and you're with the family and, it's about something that could be answered the next day. Sure. But without a doubt, I think it's just common courtesy to get back to people as quickly as you can without it being like a burden. Because I think if everybody's getting back to everything in their life at once, it becomes overwhelming, and I was in a meeting the other day and my phone kept buzzing. I probably shouldn't have had it on the table, right? But it goes to show you that there's always, especially as you get more experienced and you get more clients and complex deals, there's always something going on. So I think each situation is different. How do you handle it, Lauren?
I'm with you 100%. If it's a new contact coming in or a new lead, obviously I'm answering, I'm responding, I'm making the phone call. And if I can't, then I set the appointment to have the first phone call so that they know that they're going to be tended to. I feel like you're training somebody, which is good and bad. If you have the time and you're new, then everybody can be your VIP number one. But once you have business in place, you can't always be available. You're in meetings, you are filming podcasts, whatever you're doing, and you just can't be on your phone. So once the person trusts that I'm going to get back to them, I usually tell them, if I don't get back to you right away, I will always respond. It might not be that day if it's not important or urgent, but I will get back to you at some point. And I feel like that helps, but it's just creating that basic trust in the beginning that they know that they can rely on the fact that you will get back to them. So I don't know. I kind of think that somebody who responds super fast all the time, I feel like they don't have anything else going on. I don't know if that's true or not, or there's some people who maybe are just addicted to their phone and like want to respond, but I've really trained myself to not. Like I don't time block responses by any means, but I wait till I'm not in the middle of something. Again, it has to be like I'm not under contract with somebody so that I can take the time that I'm working on whatever I'm working on and allow that to fully develop, because it takes 17 to 20 minutes to realign yourself with whatever you're doing if you're drawn away. So if I pull away to answer a text, I have to like sit down and get back in the mindset in order to get that done, versus like working all the way through, getting it done in 20 minutes instead of taking an hour because you constantly keep responding and answering and all that stuff.
I do believe when a lead comes in too, like, for example, I sometimes they'll be like, man, that was almost creepy, how quickly you responded. But after that 5 seconds of them saying that, we're already into the meat and potatoes, and the relationship is already building. Whereas maybe they would be at lunch or something else when I call back, and then there's never any contact made. But I get it too. I don't think people want to come off as desperate either. And one other thing is, like, you're ending communication. So if I'm with a client and just be like, hey, I'm going to get this, I'd be very clear and be like, after, okay, you wanted to know about, this community. I'm going to get you some information and I'll get you that over by tonight, or I'll get that over to you within 24 hours. Don't leave it vague where they don't know what's next. Right.
But if you give a timestamp, you have to do it within the timestamp. I literally just experienced a Hamby lady. She's like, oh, I'll get that to you today. So I told my client, she said she'd get that estimate to us today. Well, today comes and goes. Tomorrow it's noon. I haven't heard from her. My client's like, hey, did we get the estimate? I'm like, no, I didn't. So then I'm following up with her. And it's like, you said you would get it to me at this time. Don't overpromise and underdeliver, because now you look bad. She eventually got it to us. Wasn't as great as I thought it would be, but it just it's like, now I'm like, I don't really know if I can trust you.
And then, at least you can be like, hey, I just followed up, with this person and I'm still waiting on them. I just want to let you know.
What you said about, like, if your client reaches out first, it is such a punch in the stomach when the client does. Oh, it just gets me every time. I don't know how you feel, but I'm like, God damn it. Like, I knew I needed to. It was a looming thought, or it was sitting in my gut, and it was like, maybe I just didn't get to it. And then they text and I'm like, damn it. Like, it just hits me every time so hard.
Things tend to fall through the cracks, and like if I don't write it down, it's probably not going to happen. So I always have, I wake up sometimes and I'm like looking at what I wrote down for that day, and I'm like, what? I don't even understand. Like, I just have a person's name, and I'm like, what am I supposed to do here? So, but I think just being clear in your communications is a big thing. So
yeah. I agree. Okay, question number 2. Earlier, you said that you were in a meeting and your phone kept buzzing. So what is your etiquette around taking phone calls during meetings or texting during meetings, as well as clicking over when you're on the phone with a client and maybe you have another client who's calling in?
I think it's super important to give 100% of your attention to whoever's in front of you. Like, end of story. I think anything else is insulting. Now, in this particular situation, this was yesterday. The ironic thing was the phone call that was coming through was not important. But like, my phone kept buzzing, and the guy who I was sitting with, he's like, man, you can take that. And he said that, and I just picked up and I said, like, hey, I'm gonna call you back. And then I made sure to put my phone out of sight, so that if it went off again, there wouldn't be any issue with it. But if I'm sitting there, and I can tell this, like, if I'm talking to somebody and they're texting, I can tell when somebody's got 90% of their attention, and I'll just be like, hey, I'm just going to wait till you finish. And then they kind of get the point, because I can tell whatever I say, they're not even going to understand, because they're already in that. So I think it's super rude to take a call or anything like that. Now, look, I'm not saying if somebody's going to the hospital or there's an emergency, don't pick up your phone, right? Like, everybody's understanding of that. But in especially face-to-face meetings, and I think I've had conversations with people before, or where they were doing tours with another agent, and it's the same thing. Like, they're picking up calls and, trying to be, I've seen this too, where people pose that they're looking busy. And I don't necessarily think that is, very attractive to someone. It's cool to be busy, but am I going to be your 5th priority, 6th priority? We have there's a closing attorney here. This guy he was taking forever. And the other agent goes, Fletcher, you got to understand, this guy's really good. That's why everybody uses him. And I'm like, well, if he's so busy that he's not available, he's bad now. I don't care how good he is. It's just a closing. It's not rocket science in this situation. So any of these people can do it. But if this guy is super busy, then I'd rather use somebody else who's I'm going to be number 1 or number 2, not, number 11 or number 12. So I don't know. What are your thoughts on it? I think it's super rude to be on especially a phone when you're sitting down at lunch or having a meeting with somebody.
I do the same. When I'm face to face with somebody, I actually don't even take my phone out of my purse. I'd have my phone on silent, so there's no sound and there's no vibrate, and I leave it in my purse and I just leave it there. And I really had to brainwash myself that it was okay to sit at a 1 hour meeting and not be attached to whatever else is going on. If I know I have a busy day, I'll set the expectation for a client who I know I'm supposed to be in touch with, or if we're under contract. And I'll just say, hey, I'd have a back-to-back day. So if it takes me a little while to get back to you, that's why. I'm just always trying to set that. And it works sometimes and sometimes it doesn't, but it just makes me feel better that I at least communicated it. I actually stopped clicking over. I don't click over. I think probably stopped in like 2021. I stopped clicking over because I noticed that when people do it to me, I think it's so rude. And the only time I do take my phone out of my purse at a face-to-face meeting is if I'm like waiting for a counteroffer or the inspection request, or there's like a timely thing that's part of the transaction that I have to be available for. I will take my phone out, which is such a distraction now because I'm not used to having it. And I will say, I'm really sorry. I am waiting for somebody to call about a really important deadline in my transaction. So I have to keep my phone out and I have to take the call. Again, I'm trying to set the expectation that I'm not going to sit here on my phone. I just have one person that I'm waiting for. And that's helped. Again, I feel like it's just a common courtesy on my own. Like, that's just how I feel I would want to be treated, because I to your point, people are so aloof about their relationship with their phone. And when somebody doesn't give you their full attention, because who knows what they're doing, right? Like, the screen is facing them. You have no idea how serious it is or not. It's just so rude. And so I really tried to not be that person.
It's one thing if, a generation grew up on phones, right? But especially if you have a client, like a lot of my clients are, they're coming down here and they're empty nesters,
It's true.
It's just like they didn't even grow up with it, and I'm not saying it's okay to do it with the younger generation, but especially when you're dealing with somebody like that, I think it's just super rude because it's much more of an old school attitude, but I would never do it. And if I am that busy, I can have somebody else handle stuff. I need to be delegating work instead of just watering myself down anyway,
And I really, again, had to brainwash myself that if I don't have my phone, I'm going to live, that person's going to live. I mean, that kind of brings us into our next question. I'll just throw it out there. Do you think a response time makes or breaks a client's opinion of you and your work ethic? Because I know I was taught, always answer your phone and always respond right away. And to me, it's just like, at some point, you're a slave to your phone. And it's not really fun. But at the same time, everybody knows a real estate agent. And there is the fear instilled in us that if we don't answer, we don't get back to someone quickly, they're going to move on to the next person. Do you have that fear?
When my dad got me a watch growing up, I remember he set it 10 minutes early. And he basically said, look, this, now when you're 10 minutes late, you're going to be on time, and he was like, don't ever be late. It's like super rude. So I always show up to, or at least I try to show up to appointments super early. Like today, I had an appointment, for a closing, and we had, went to a coffee shop, then I did this, and everything was going like super slow, and I still made it ahead of time. So people are like, oh, traffic. And it's like, hey, well, you kind of know that's inevitable. So I always like to be, available, and I think response time with your client, you should be getting back to them, right? Now, there are certain things too. I've had something where a little back and forth, and this isn't a client, but this is somebody who's interested, and it's a proposal. And, they took like 3 days to come back to us on something. So it wasn't like I felt the need as soon as they emailed us, their follow-up, that I had to get this over to them right away, right? So it was also, and this is kind of like a negotiation as well. So I think it was like their way of framing, hey, like, we're not in any rush. So I didn't want to give the impression that I was in any rush either. But I think when it comes to clients, and sometimes you just might have to, because I'm somebody that I'll work on weekends, that not this weekend, but the weekend coming up, I have people coming in town and we're touring Saturday and Sunday. I'm liable to basically fill up my calendar if I'm not like not saying I'm going to let people take advantage of it, but I also need to, hey, look, I got my son's graduation that day, or I have this, or man, it's 6 p.m. Can I get back to you tomorrow on this? I was with an agent. I sent him a message last night, and we've been going back and forth on this deal. And he basically responded and he said, have a good night, Fletcher. And it was like 8 p.m. And I was like, I got the message, I was like, hey, we'll continue this tomorrow. Yeah. So you want to get back to people, but you also don't want to, like you said, be living on your phone. Because I think that's the type of thing when you're laying on your deathbed and you're like, was me working at 10 p.m. getting back to every single thing that important when I could have been with my family,
Yeah. Yeah.
I think it all comes back to being respectful. And I think like good real estate agents are pretty natural with that. Like you said, you wouldn't want somebody clicking over on you. So why would you do it to somebody else? Like just how would you want to be treated?
Right.
And the good thing is about people that are respectful is if you work in this industry long enough, you'll see multiple people that are doing the exact same things that we're talking about in a negative way. Like they're on their phone or, I've seen this. I've been with an agent once when I first got here and her phone rang and she, declined the call and she's like, oh, I can't give them the bad news. And I'm like, dude, well, baddest news does not age well. That's a saying that I've heard somebody use, and I find that to be true. So just because I don't want to tell somebody something, that's not a reason that I shouldn't be getting back to them. I should be letting them know that immediately, and I think, you get better real estate. Nisha Go at our conference here, she said it's based around uncomfortable conversations.
Oh, yeah.
So it's one thing if it's like too much communication, but it's another thing is like when you get news, it should be relayed. A lot of people are scared to relay quote unquote bad news, but a lot of times that bad news can turn, into a different deal that turns into good news, right?
Yeah. I mean, that's just part of the job. And I know in the beginning I would practice when I have bad news to deliver. Like, here's what I want to say. And then I would practice it or I would record it. I was like, oh, that was too many words. Oh, it didn't sound confident. Oh, this, oh, that. I would kind of play with it until it became more comfortable. And now it's like, it's part of the job. Like you just call, you get it over with, you problem solve. I mean, think it through. Don't just call and be the messenger. Your job is to make sure that you have a problem to solve and the solution to go with that problem. But yeah, that's a good point. I never really thought about that. I'm like a rip the Band-Aid off person. So I just go for it. If I have the news, I'm like, okay, this is what needs to happen. This is how I'm going to present it. Let's make a call.
And I think that's honestly the best when it comes to this type of thing. Some people need to hear, but I find that the best agents, it's not because they know how to tour the best or the best thing. It's just because their communication skills are, they know when to call it quits. It's like, hey, it's 8 p.m. I'm going to get back to this person. And like our offer is ready to go for tomorrow morning, type thing versus, hey, should I be getting that? I feel like it just comes more natural to people that are, that have been in the business for a while and doing good things,
Okay, next question. Closing the loop and ending a conversation. Is this important to you and do you even do it?
Closings take a while. It can be like, a 3-month deal. So you might, and then you have tours, you have, discovery times before that where you're getting to know the client, what they want. I always think it's good, literally just even like ask questions, like, or be like, a lot of times I'll write stuff down and I'll be like, all right, Tim, so first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to get the closing cost estimate from the attorney on this one. Second, I'm going to find if it really is 2 parking spaces that are covered. Third, I'm going to find, whatever it is, as opposed to just kind of leaving it wide open. I think like, everything.
See you later. Thanks for the meeting.
Yeah. Or it's like, hey, what did we just, have a 30-minute conversation for? So I think clarity, but once again, I think a lot of agents that are in this long enough know exactly what's coming next. And a lot of times you could just email them and be like, hey, from our conversation, you told me you wanted to look on the Pacific side. So I'm going to be finding places here, here, and here. And then also let me know if you guys end up extending the stay, So you can always, I've done that as well, where it's a call and then I'll email them after, just kind of like a recap. And that's just my way of following up and letting them know like, hey, What other information do you need?
And then they know what they're waiting for. And sometimes, like, if you're dealing with an association, you could say, like, they don't always get back to me very quickly. Again, trying to get ahead of the problem before it really turns into anything. Because sometimes, I don't know if you do this, but like sometimes when I have something to do, I'll deliver the news and then it's like, oh, I forgot to like get the follow-up piece to that because I forgot or I was busy or I didn't write it down. And then all of a sudden, that's when they come and they get like, hey, what happened to this? And I'm like, oh, yeah, that's my bad, right? So you have to like take the time that when you get off the phone with them, either put something in your calendar, send an email, send yourself a text reminder, write it down in your notebook, whatever it is. Because I think in the beginning of a real estate career, you have so much time and so few clients that you get used to this system, which is kind of just intangible because you don't have that much going on. But then once you have a lot of business and a lot of clients who you need to tend to, everything has to be tangible. You have to see it. You have to check it off. You have to have a timeline for it. Otherwise, it just all gets lost. And then you become, that incommunicative, unreliable agent. And therefore, your business is going to go down the drain. And I always try to end a conversation, like closing the loop for me, even if it's just liking a message or kind of what that guy said to you, like, that's great. Thank you for your time. I'll talk to you tomorrow. Or I will specifically say, like, this isn't important or urgent and I have other things going on. So I will talk to you tomorrow. A good one, if this is actually what you're doing, is like, hey, I've already had a glass of wine and I don't work with alcohol in my system. And that's always a good one. If like you're at dinner and you feel like maybe you should answer. I have a tendency to like bring the moon star in the skies to somebody if I've had a drink. So I had to learn that I'm not allowed to do business while I drink. So I'll just say, hey, girl, I'm already at dinner and I'm having some wine. And if this isn't super important, let's talk tomorrow. I don't like to work when I'm drinking. And everybody respects it. They respect the fact that you're at dinner, the fact that you're out doing something for yourself, and the fact that you told them. And I don't think anybody's ever said, like, I actually really need to talk to you right now, because nothing really is that important. And usually if you can let a client like sit on something, they find the answer out themselves or they calm themselves down and then you're kind of off.
If somebody reaches out, like, for example, I get a phone call and I'm in the middle of something and maybe it's not acceptable to take the phone call, what I'll do is I'll text them and just be like, hey, I'm on tour right now. Can I call you back in the afternoon?
Right. Rather than
get it as, just like leaving it. Yeah. And I really do prefer phone calls over just back and forth texting. In 2 minutes, I can probably accomplish more than literally 45 minutes back and forth and just be a little bit more clear. But it's just, once again, if somebody's calling you and you don't pick it up, like, let them know, hey, that you acknowledge that, right? Yeah. And that you're going to get back to them.
And that leads us to our next question is, when you acknowledge someone's text, you have a system to respond. I mark it as unread. I will open it, respond, mark it as unread. It reminds me I need to do it later. A lot of times we're driving. And if you're on the phone driving, like, the amount of like near accidents I've been in from being on my phone, I'm not on my phone anymore in my car unless I'm talking, because I can at least focus on what I'm doing. But it is scary. And I always feel like every time there's like oh my gosh, I just stopped in the nick of time. That's a reminder, like, get off your phone. Whatever you're doing is so unimportant. But at the same time, if you open it, you get in that almost accident, you're going to forget about it. Your phone's going to close and then it's left unread and you didn't get back to them. And now you're dropping the ball. Like, one little action leads to the next, right?
No, exactly. I like what you mentioned about leaving it unread. And then that way, you go back to it and you're like, okay, what was this? And like, is this something that's important, right? But at least there's a way, because if you open that, there's this book, it's called The Ultimate Sales Machine. And it's this guy, it's Chet, I can't remember, Chet Holmes. And he has a system, he calls it touch it once. Only touch it once. And it's like, hey, if that email comes in and like you open it up, you need to be in a work mode where you're able to do that. Because if you just put it on your desk, your desk starts piling up. So just getting in a system where it's like, hey, are you going to do this now or are you going to get to it later? Because everything starts piling up and then all of a sudden a week later you haven't gotten to it. And then the person's like, and what the hell is going on? I was supposed to get this. And that'll even happen to me. And I'm like, oh, crap. I completely forgot to get back on this particular thing. So we have something coming up too about systems. But I think just having things in place that prevent that type of thing from happening, you know?
Well, what about the people on WhatsApp or at iMessage that have their read receipts on? And I can see that they read it within like 1 minute, 10 minutes. I can see that they're online right now. I haven't had a response. And I'm like, okay, so I'm guessing you didn't mark it as unread. And now it's been 2 days. I don't have a response. I needed something from you. A part of me is like, you know what? I'm not your babysitter. I'm not going to try and make you respond to me, set an appointment with me. I'm going to keep moving about my day. And then I'll tell somebody, yeah, I didn't hear back from you.
Yeah. No, here's another thing too about that is if, so I'll call somebody or they'll text me, you know, and like a question, and I'm like, hey, I'll call them. A lot of people don't like that. And I'm talking more about like agents that I work with, the people on my team. Or if I call somebody, I want to let them make sure, because a lot of people are like, hey, well, I never got a call. I will text and be like, hey, just try to call you. Like, let me know when you're available. And that way it's not covering my ass, but it's like, hey, I just try to get back in touch with you, and you weren't available, but I'm available. So if you need me, let me know, as opposed to just trying to call somebody back and then there's nothing there. Because I've had this situation where, hey, I tried to call you back and they're like, I didn't get a phone call. You know, like I'm looking at it right here, you know, it's like 3:58, you know, it says,
you feel like you snapshot it and send it to the proof.
Exactly. So I think it's very good. You know, there's multiple ways to do it, or, you know, the client that I'm working with now from Los Angeles, you know, we're going back and forth on email with this letter of intent for this place. And I'll send them be like, hey, I just emailed it over, you know, so multiple ways that you're showing them that you're doing this, I think is because you never know, like, especially when I'm working with like retiree age people, they might get a message that they don't see. You know, they didn't grow up having a smartphone in their hand or a laptop, you know, so I think it's important to use all those little things. And just like you said the other day, is like putting something on the calendar for both people. If it's like a tour, you know, doing everything just to show like, hey, you know, and that's important. I like that, Lauren, because it shows me that your time is valuable, right? So it's like, hey, here's when we're doing this, it basically like, hey, I'm taking the time out of my day for like this hour, these, you know, 30 minutes, whatever to get this done. You know, and you're letting them know that.
I don't know if guys do this as much, but girls are like, oh my God, I need to see you. Let's hang out. And I always, I'm like, okay, when? Or I'll throw out, hey, does Saturday at 11 a.m. work? Crickets. I'm like, you know what? Yeah. It's in writing. I tried. Okay, I tried. But it's the same thing with real estate agents, which actually is, I think one of the questions on here is like, I'm going to jump out of order real quick. The unrealistic expectations that clients have for their agent to get back to them, but they do not have to respond to us in any timely manner.
A lot of people are like this, Lauren, and this is very important that you brought it up. And I actually didn't even see this one, but a lot of people, you know, they'll be disrespectful of your time, and a lot of people kind of think down upon real estate agents, right? And there's so much, like, I mean, earlier today I had a lot of stress with things. I'm like, I know somebody would not want to be dealing with this type of stuff. So just to disrespect and, you know, like, hey, it's a two-way street. You want this or they want information, then you get it over and it's like, hey, well, what's up now, right? So I think it goes both ways, but yeah, I don't know if you have any examples of that, but if somebody's, you know, and then they'll just come back, you know, later with something, and it's like, man, I try to avoid people like that, if I'm being honest.
Yeah, I mean, my best example, because when you're under contract with somebody, they're very, very responsive because they need you, because they have money tied to the line, because they're trying to buy or sell a house. They need you. You are a vehicle to get them to what they need. However, it's the follow-up, right? I'm like, I have your closing gift, crickets. Another month goes by. Hey, how's the house? I still have your closing gift, like crickets, right? And in the beginning of my career, I would have people that I would meet at open houses. And in my, you know, juvenile brain, I would think, okay, it takes 10 seconds to send a text message. So people would hear from me once a month. I mean, I went years for sending one text message once a month to a long list of people that I curated over the years of open houses, and very few responded. One actually turned into a sale like 4 years down the road, and she had not an iPhone. So it was just like me, like green, 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 like every holiday, everything, like just how are you, thinking of you, checking in, Merry Christmas, like anything I could think of. And finally, one day out of the blue, they're like, hey, Lauren, sorry I never responded to your text messages. I'm like, dude, I've had like 2 new phones. I don't even have the thread anymore. But ironically enough, they've turned into very, very, very good friends. But it's just kind of funny because I feel like that's my one hope story where I'm like, okay, well, I did it and it worked, but that's not common. And I think it's very frustrating when you're like married to somebody for the life of the transaction or before and after. Sorry, or before if it's a buyer and kind of like the intensity of a seller. And then all of a sudden it closes and you literally cannot get in touch with them. But
Yeah.
here they are. They show up again in 2 or 3 years when they need something else. And it's like, oh, so your phone works. So you just are like literally ignoring me. I don't know. It just doesn't feel good. I'm not a parent, but it feels like a thankless job.
No, and I'm actually referring more to, for example, in my situation where people are they're reaching out to me to buy a property down here and they want information. It'll be stuff where like you'll tour. I've had this where like, you'll tour somebody and then they go home, they won't even answer. So there's a type of person that wants you to get back to them as soon as possible and then they just won't. And that's very disrespectful. And to be honest, I'm getting really good at sniffing that out. I've just gotten pretty good at being like, hey, this seems like it's going this way. And they'll come back with stuff and you get the answer they want and it'll be like, hey, like I got this probably quicker than anybody else could have. And like, here's exactly what you were looking for. So like the next step is this, and then it's nothing. And it's like, hey, they're just kind of, and I've seen this too. Like when it was 2020 and it was so busy here, I think it was busy everywhere. I would pick people up and I was like, hey, and he'd be like, hey, Bob. I'd be like, okay, this is Bob. Like that's how busy it got. And I picked this guy up and he literally, I think, was just trying to get a break from his wife at the resort. So we just like went around and looked at no, I swear to God. And I'm like 30 minutes into the tour. I'm like, why did I, a simple phone call would have at least figured this out and it was fine. Like I remember him being a really nice guy, but he had and at least he was like genuine about it. Like not like talking bad about his wife or something. But what I'm saying is he would just wanted to look around. Right. So he let me know that. But the people that lead you on and expect like top service and then they don't have the decency to respond back to you, that's something that does bother me. I will say this though too, real estate agents are doing the exact same thing. Like they're basically, if you're not buying, get away from me type thing, so
that is true.
It goes both ways. There's like, bad buyers and sellers and there's bad agents. Like
I think there are agents. I know this lady who's like, if you're not buying or selling in the next 3 months, I don't want to talk to you. Well, what about your pipeline in the next 3 months or longer, But
yeah, but see, that's what I'm saying is like, even if I was buying, I wouldn't want to hear that. You know what I mean? If I was buying that week, I'd be like, you know what? And I think that's one of the reasons that I really like social content is because, for example, I'll say Mark from Los Angeles, who I'm working on this guy is legit. He's kind of the same vibe. He's like really low key, but he knows what he wants, and I attracted that through the content that I'm doing. And even if, like I said, even if he didn't, right? But it's just having the decency to respect somebody's occupation and more importantly, their time. Just be like, hey man, Fletcher, I got back home and I just got to be honest, like Cabo is not the place I want to be in.
And that's
like,
all
okay,
that we want
cool.
to hear. That's the truth. That's all we want to hear. So usually I end a conversation and I'll say, please let me know either way, because that gives them the permission to tell me no.
Have you ever heard of the follow up versus the follow back?
No, I have not.
Okay. So follow up is obviously, I think everybody knows. I mean, I've heard this a lot. The sales and the follow up, at least 7 touches, however the deal is going, right? But just following up and providing value. The follow back is after somebody has purchased. And I found this, I was reading this in Gary Keller's book, I think this was. And I remembered, I was like, I'm talking back in like the heyday. I was like, oh my God. I was like, man, I haven't spoken to Ken, so and it's super nice guy, bought a place, like loves it here, like goes spearfish, like he's like Baja junkie, really nice guy. And I sent him a text, and this was like, 4 years later. And I could tell like he was like, hey, you hadn't reached, he didn't say anything. He was like, hey man, how's it going? But I could just tell it seemed like a desperate measure. And I was kind of testing it out, and I was like, this is very true. So staying in touch with clients as well is something that I'm not particularly good at, and you're very social. A lot of people here, they want to go play golf. They want to go out to eat. And I'm actually very selective because I am really like an introvert. So I'm kind of selective with that. And I'm not the best at the follow back, I am with like because I become really good friends with a lot of my clients too. That's where I have dropped the ball, where I'm generally really good. But I've noticed, in the past, there's been clients that I haven't followed back with, which I think at least like just like you writing like a handwritten letter is something that it's probably a place where you shine.
I had to put a system in place. Feel free to steal it. So I have the day it closes. I have a 1 month, a 3 month, a 6 month, a 9 month, a 12-month follow-up reminder in my calendar. And then on the 12-month, I have an annual. Just because it's sitting there in my calendar at the top of my calendar, I've probably gotten a little lazy and I haven't done it quite as often as I should, just to like reach out and say hello. But at least for a while when I was super on top of it.
Walk me through this. If you had a client that closed on property tomorrow, you're going to go and like put those, like each one of those in your calendar, or
yes.
Like something does it like automatically.
I don't have an assistant at this moment in time, but my assistant usually does.
That's dedication. That's dedication.
Yeah, but it's what you just talked about. Like,
now, exactly.
Ensures you don't drop the ball. And if as a real estate agent, that the number one complaint people have is that they never hear from their real estate agent again, meaning after they close.
I'm feeling personally attacked here, Lori.
That was my solution to fix it. I had no idea what else to do because I would forget. Again, once you have a big enough business, I can only remember like one closing from a client because it's on Halloween and I showed up in my Halloween outfit and it was like a whole thing. And that's like the only one I can actually remember. I can usually remember the month. Birthdays are also good too, just to like send a text and say happy birthday or call or take them out for a drink or whatever. But yeah, that had to be my plot. So if we close on June 30th, then it would be July 30th and then 3 months from June 30th and then 6 months from June 30th.
And this is more like emails or
no,
written letters?
No, I just send them a text or call them.
Okay.
Depends on my relationship with them. If they became close and we spoke on the phone a lot, no problem. I would just give them a call. But if it's like really we didn't see each other much and it was like just business, it's just a text message. And I've had people tell me, like, I shouldn't say old people, but I have had some very old people who are like in their 80s and 90s, and they're like, I can't believe you still talk to me. And I'm sitting there and I can't believe that they're saying that. And I'm like, what do you mean?
Yeah.
They're like, I'm 90. I've had so many real estate agents in my life, and I do not hear from or talk to a single one. And these are rental clients, and they're luxury rentals, so a little different than just like a $1,500 a month or something. But I don't know, it made me feel good, and it made me feel good that they could share that and that, they didn't just feel like a transaction, a dollar sign of money, because I think that's what the reputation.
No, 100%.
That shows up.
Yeah, no, it's something that I need to work on. And I stay in touch. Like I said, a lot of people here after, because it's like adjusting to a new life and new restaurants and everything like that. So there's a lot of it where it just naturally happens. And that becomes, like I said, it's easy for me because it's, oh, hey, how do we do this? We need this. We need to get, this. So like that, it keeps staying. And because I had so many of those, I was like, oh, I'm keeping in touch with all these people. But no, there were clients that were, and like I said, for example, Ken would not say a bad thing about me, but I'd be like, hey, like I just hadn't heard from him. and that's exactly what you're saying. But when I was doing everything, it was done very well. But then that's when that came to, I'm like, okay. And this is what we're talking about, is that as soon as you think you know everything and there's no way to improve, or you're like that client that if you're not buying and blah, 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 I think it's time to hang it up, just because you are going to get smoked by somebody who is ready to do exactly what you're not doing, and that's just the mentality I have. Is I personally learn a lot more from the things that I do wrong than the things that I do well. And I can hide a lot of the BS or things that I could be improving on just by focusing on what I'm doing well.
This was good. We got through a lot of stuff. I hope that it helps people understand like how we each view response times to clients, to other agents, how we wrap up our days, to everything. Because I do think that the majority of the business and the referral business and the follow-up business is all in the communication.
I would agree. And Lauren, thanks so much for your time. This is the third. I think we'll be doing quite a few. I think we already have a lot of questions lined up for the next one. So, but if you are listening or watching this, let us know if you've made it this far, awesome. Let us know that. And also what else you would want to know when it comes to being a real estate agent. Because I think these are all very, Lauren, when we sit down, I learn stuff. We have completely different styles, but I think we're both very good at what we do, but there's ways to get better. And it's always good to hear how somebody who has a different background is doing things,
Always room to improve.
I thought it was a 9. I thought it was like at least a 9.3, but hey, I'm looking wrong.
Well, you still got room to improve that 0.7, dude.
Exactly.
All right. Thank you.
Cool. Bye.
Bye.